I've finished the main storyline of Assassin's Creed Black Flag Resynced and played over 50 hours so far, so I'm going to share some of the things I wish I'd known earlier on in the game so you can hopefully have a more enjoyable experience in the Caribbean. No spoilers in this video, of course, and cheers to Ubisoft the review code so I can get this guide out to you very swiftly. And let's start with movement and a few parkour tips, because this is the stuff that makes Edward feel more responsive in the game, in my opinion. So firstly, turn on Advanced Parkour in your settings, because that gives you the manual jump, which is back in this game. And not only does this give you more finesse when you want Edward to jump onto something specific, but if you spam jump through shallow water, which you are going to run into a lot in this game, then you can cover ground far quicker than just wading through it if this setting wasn't turned on. I've also found it quite useful in restricted zones, because if an enemy spots you while you're kind of sprinting towards them, as they recognize sound in this remake, a quick manual jump can then close that gap and let you assassinate them before the wider area or other NPCs are properly alerted. And there is full damage in this game, which can absolutely kill you if you do get it wrong. But the trick here is, just like in Shadows, is to press the circle or the roll button before you do hit the ground, which negates the full damage. Now, it took me a few hours to actually realize they had snuck this in, because the game doesn't tell you this, so definitely keep that one in your back pocket. It is very useful. But what about combat? Because there is quite a few things I wish I'd known sooner there as well. Now, as you'd expect, headshots with your pistols are instant kills in this game, but most of the time you're probably not going to be lining up clean shots by holding L2 and R2, because when you hold R2 and press triangle, Edward unloads all of his guns at once to everyone in the vicinity, and it's how most of us are going to use the pistols in this game, myself included, because it looks really cool. However, if you do turn on aim assist in the settings, and then you stand still, you can't be moving for this, and then you hold L2 to aim, as you'll see, the aim dot will automatically tick up towards the enemy's head here, which will give you a much easier instant kill, even on the big boy brutes, so you don't have to break their armor, which really can be a pain early on in the game. And by the way, to reload outside of combat, do press L2 and then triangle, and this will refresh your bullets. Annoyingly, for some reason, it took me way too long to figure that out, so you don't actually have to walk or enter into the next combat fight. Try and fire your pistols and realize that they haven't reloaded. Now, speaking of breaking enemy defenses, I have found the sweep kick ability to be pretty unreliable, because a lot of enemies just automatically jump back and dodge it, which I find really annoying. So I would recommend using the rope dart to first pull them in, then kick them to the ground to begin your takedown chain, especially on the faster and agile enemies in the game. And the rope dart, before I forget, is also brilliant for neutralizing enemies in towers, by the way. So whenever you get close, use that, bring them to the ground, saves you a bullet, and also you don't need to climb up the ladder to kill them. But when you are boarding on a ship or you're fighting in a tight space, I would always suggest kicking enemies back into a wall, because a object or structure will be nearby, and that consistently allows you to initiate the takedown option, and it's far more reliable than the leg sweep just on its own, in my opinion. And if you are finding these tips useful so far, by the way, please do leave a very swift like or click the hype button down below. It takes 2 seconds and it helps me out against all this AI slop floating around right now online. I'm sure you find it as frustrating as I do, so thanks very much for doing that. Now, what about stealth? Because even though it's not the main focus of this game, you can still do a few things to make it feel like it is. Now, enemies are alerted by how much sound that you make. So if you sprint up behind someone, they're going to turn around and spot you much quicker compared to if you approach them more quietly. Now, I have found that if you just simply jog towards enemies in an encampment or a restricted area like a warehouse, so you're not completely silent, but you are quiet enough that Edward can keep his momentum and cleanly assassinate guards without triggering the whole compound. You can also meditate by holding left on the D-pad to switch from day to night, which reduces guard detection in the darkness and makes this even easier. Now, because there isn't a crouched sprint option in this game, spamming the roll button while crouched is a quicker way to cover ground while staying in stealth. And when you are hiding in the bushes or you're lurking out of line of sight, make sure you use your rope dart to actually pull enemies into your killing zone for a quick assassination, as it keeps you hidden and you can often clear a lot of enemies extremely quickly. You can also equip the rope dart in your other tool wheel here in the bottom left hand corner, and by doing so you then have manual control over where you want to throw it, such as using it to break boxes and distract guards, or you can even sabotage the reinforcement spell whilst remaining stealth as well. Now, manually aiming does take a couple seconds calibration versus just the auto fire of R2 and circle, but I just find it more effective and more fun when I do this. Of course, this wouldn't be an Assassin's Creed game though without a smoke bomb, so don't forget to use those as well, especially when boarding ships or raiding forts, because they are one of the quickest ways to instantly assassinate enemies and get yourself out of a tight spot. Now, actually speaking of tight spots, having a good early build for Edward is going to bail you out a lot of the time. So let me show you what's worth getting sooner rather than later. Because you could play through this game without really thinking about weapons, trinkets or guns, and you'd still finish the story and enjoy it, I imagine. But you'd also be making combat way harder than it needs to be and missing out on a lot of fun that can be had. And what I would recommend here is making sure that you take advantage of the legendary perks early on in the game, especially anything that improves your takedown chain. So with that in mind, I would pick up the Shark Tooth trinket from the general store because that lets you include brutes in your chain takedowns. And then I would then pair it with the Black Pearl trinket from the treasure dealer, which adds one extra enemy to your takedown chains. Then at that same treasure dealer, you could also buy the matched golden swords, which make takedowns even easier to trigger and increasing their range to trigger as well. So all of this works very nicely together, but what you're building here is basically 5 instant kills that are easier to trigger, that also work on brutes, meaning that you can nuke a whole load of enemies pretty early on if you spend your money wisely. Of course, there are more legendary weapons and stronger perks later on in the game, but I show you this as an example because the main thing is not to ignore perks. Build Edward around the way you like to play and you'll feel the difference straight away, which is a good segue onto naval combat actually, because you may be spending even more time on the high seas than on land, so it's important that you know how to use your ship and how you can sail it like you've stolen it. Now, something I misunderstood for a while is that the round shot and the heavy shot in this game are 2 different cannonball types. Round shot is your normal aimed broadside cannonballs, and when you upgrade them, you can switch to the heated version of them, which fires for longer and it does more explosive damage, but just at a shorter range. Now, heavy shots do more damage than both of those round shot cannonballs. The thing is though, it only fires when you are not aiming. So as I'm showing you here on your screen, when I aim, I fire the round shot, and when I don't aim and I just press the R2 fire button besides a ship, I would then fire just the heavy shot. So the key here for me is simple. When you're right up next to a ship, stop aiming and just press your R2 or your fire button, whatever the platform you're playing on, to then hit the enemy with the heavy shot because it does way more damage at that range. That said, when you are firing your heated round shots, you don't need to keep holding the fire button until it finishes. Just press it once, then start using your swivel cannon on the weak points as they then pop up and appear. So you end up outputting damage from both sources at the same time. You don't have to wait for either or, if you know what I mean. And you can also actually use brace in the same way. So fire your broadside and then immediately start bracing as soon as you see the opposing ship light up or their cannonballs fire. If I zoom in here for you, start bracing then, and you will then reduce incoming damage while your cannons keep doing their thing. Now, just by operating your ship like this, you're going to spend less gold repairing it, and you won't have to sink an enemy ship just by having to click on repairs because you took an absolute beating in that battle. Instead, you can loot the captain's lockbox and get a lot more loot with every naval battle. And this is also going to make forts much easier to deal with as well. So let's go through them now. So now you've got the bracing and firing mechanic down. If you haven't already done so, do upgrade your mortars and the mortar storage from your harbour master so you can carry at least 15 mortar shells. And I say that because I cleared all the forts in the game before sequence 4 with 15 mortars and braced broadsides. So you don't need to wait until the jackdaw is completely ridiculously kitted out before you start doing them. In fact, you can also meditate with that left D-pad and turn it into day and night as we've discussed, which reduces the fort's visibility, meaning you can actually sneak up pretty close to the fort before it detects you and get some easy heated shots away compared to fighting it in the daylight. Now, once you have destroyed the towers and you've docked, your crew can take the fort's morale bar down to around half just by them doing their thing, but they won't actually complete the fort for you. So if there's a time to go AFK in the game, that is the time. When you come back, run inside and focus on blowing up the TNT barrels, because I found this to be the quickest way to reduce the morale bars you can see here. And then what you want to do is head to the captain's quarters at the top and ignore his deputies and just use the aim assist headshot tip that we spoke about earlier to finish the fort without needing to clear every guard in front of him. And one of the reasons I recommend smashing these out is not just because it opens up the fleet mechanic, which we'll go through in just a moment, but it also provides you with a lot of cash to upgrade your ship to almost maximum level very early in the game. But to actually get it to max level, you're going to need to get hold of the schematics to do so. So let's go through what they are right now and how you get them. So when you upgrade your Harbour Master to tier 3 and then you fully upgrade all of the parts of your ship up to that max level, you're still not going to be able to complete those 4 legendary ship battles unless you're really good until you've unlocked these schematics. So as soon as you reach this point, you need to make a beeline for the hull upgrade, which you can pick up relatively early on in the diving for medicine story quest in sequence 6. Just make sure you loot the chest, this chest here, when you are down there, because it will save you a trip going back later. I then also recommend grabbing the broadside cannons schematic, which increases the amount of cannons on your ship for max damage output, that can be found at the blue hull wreck located here on your map, and the swivel gun schematic, which takes advantage of those weak points that appear on enemies and forts, with that schematic being found in the Devil's Eyes caverns located here on your map. Now the mortar and the heated round shot upgrades are also excellent pickups, but I completed the legendary ships and endgame content without needing those. So the hull, broadside and swivel upgrades are the main minimum threshold I would prioritize early when it comes to max upgrades and grabbing hold of these schematics, especially if you have already recruited Lucy as your officer when her quest appears at the hideout, because her perfect brace ability reduces incoming fire by a significant amount, and it's honestly a must get for the toughest naval fights in the game that you're going to come across. That said, once you have defeated forts and started building this upgraded fleet, what does this fleet mechanic actually do? What do you get out of it, and is it worth your time? Well, now you've completed the forts, the whole map starts opening up to you, which means you can add the 4 different ship types to your fleet and then send them on missions in each of the regions around the world. Now, the important thing to understand is the risk level in the bottom right-hand side of your screen, as you can see here, because that decides how likely your ship is to come back damaged from its mission, which means spending money to repair it. So do yourself a favor and just clear the whole board of risk first, which you can do by completing patrol missions, which are the large ship models on the map, and each one reduces that risk level by a factor of 1 in that specific region. The catch is you'll need man of war ships for some of these missions, and they start spawning after the Blackbeard tailing mission early in the storyline, and after you do complete that, they will appear pretty frequently in both southern corners of the map. Now, once you've reduced the risk in the region you're working in, that's when you engage with scout missions, which are the telescope models here, and you'll need a couple of frigates captured to be able to do those. Now, these scout missions take 15 minutes each, and crucially they refresh the warehouses across the map, of which there are 9, and this is crucial because warehouses give you the important trade resources that can be then used for money missions and legendary fleet rewards. So what is the best method to get those resources quickly and efficiently here? Well, you can filter through these 9 warehouses in the game using your map legend, as you can see me do here with the D-pad. And when you complete one, what you'll find is that it will then turn yellow on your map, and you'll get that 2-hour countdown timer, as you can see here. But now that we've got our frigates on standby in our fleet, what we want to do is run those 15-minute refresh missions, and we can start lining this all up at one time. So firstly, fast travel to the nearest sync point at a warehouse, press L2 to observe and locate the warehouse key. Then use that stealth jogging tip that we used earlier on in the video for an easy assassination and pickup. Then run to the warehouse, grab the trade resource, loot it, and if you're lucky you might get some art collectibles as well, which I'll cover properly in another video after this one. And then after that, fast travel back to the jackdaw, open up the fleet map menu, start your frigate on that warehouse refresh mission that you've just cleared, and then send a man of war to reduce the risk if it has gone back up. It does vary a lot depending upon the mission, but in any case, send your schooner on a trade mission now with the resources you just collected, and then move on to the next warehouse and rinse and repeat. It took me under a minute to clear one warehouse, so smashing out all 9 is certainly very doable in a short amount of time, and once this loop is up and running, you'll be earning trade resources and money very quickly. I will put a map of all of these warehouse locations on your screen right now, so you can just unlock nearby sync points and rotate through them really quickly when you need to. But I've also got a couple more settings here that I think you need to be aware of, because they make the game more enjoyable for you to play. Firstly, when you go to vendors to buy or sell items, instead of pressing or holding the R2 button until the purchase quantity is maxed out, as you can see here, just press L2 initially and it will just max the amount out instantly, so you can buy what you need and just get out of the menus very quickly. If you're finding the game challenging in places, by the way, as I know the developers have upped the difficulty across a lot of this remake, having spoken to them in person, then do not struggle unnecessarily. Just go to the gameplay menu and tune the difficulty down to what you want, because combat, stealth, naval and side activities all have have their own independent sliders now, so you can fine tune it, so you can have really difficult ship fights, you can have easier stealth, or you can have mid combat. It's all here to have the experience that you want. Now, depending upon your platform or hardware, I'd also recommend turning off motion blur and the chromatic aberration. I still don't know why these are on by default in so many games, because I personally think that the game looks much sharper and smoother with them off, really. Personal preference, but if you're finding that the movement or blurring is making the game feel a little bit weird, it's because it's these two settings here are turned on, so knock them off and you will be golden. Now, I made another helpful video like this one with even more tips and tricks, so give that a click on your screen or TV right now so you can get even more out of this awesome game, and hopefully I will see you there in a second. Thanks to Nika for helping me in early access grind this video out for you. Rum is on her, and I will see you in that next video in just a second.